Hi, everyone. Wow, thank you. That's amazing. I should get this at home. So my name is Gary Padmore. I'm the Vice President of Education and Community Engagement at the New York Philharmonic. I also have the privilege of being the co-chair of the board of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. Today, yes, big up to the Roundtable. But we today are here to celebrate someone who is very special to our community, and that is Miss Polly Kahn. Many of us here had the privilege of knowing Polly. I met Polly in the spring of 2014, and in typical Polly fashion, I knew who Polly was actually years before, but it was the first time I formally met Polly. And in typical Polly fashion, she was really curious about knowing about me and what I was up to in my life, which I think for many of us who knew Polly, that's sort of what was kind of her MO, like understanding, who you were, what you were up to, and how she might be able to support you. And if you also knew Polly, you knew that she stood at maybe 4 feet 8 inches, maybe, with heels, perhaps, but was such a force in this field. Alongside David Shukoff and Marilyn and many other folks who are in this room, Polly is the reason why the Arts and Education Roundtable exists today. Polly was one of the first people who, she was the vice chair, the very first vice chair of our board. She also was I think, also leading the very first face-to-face conference, which is, now going back many, many years. But I think more than the work, I think Polly was someone who really cared about the individual. She was very keen on learning about, how you as an individual, as a person, are really thinking about, how that really impacted the work of you as a person. And I think, today as we honor her life and think about who she was, I think for us as a community, I also wonder, what legacy do we want to have in the field for us? What do we want to leave behind? For folks who also, knew Polly, she was an avid performer. Polly loved to play the cello. Any cellists in here? Any cello players? We have one. Wow. Okay. Anyway, but Polly, played with a number of amateur groups around the city, and also made friends wherever she went. The last thing I'll say about Polly was that I didn't always agree with Polly, and that was okay. I think Polly was actually someone who, was really enjoyed having some kind of discourse, because it was also how she learned. She was very interested in learning from others the same way we learned from her. And I miss Polly. The last time I heard from Polly was a couple of days before she passed. And it was just her kind of like just always thinking about, I'm coming to New York. I'm so excited to see you when I come next week. And I didn't have a chance to respond to Polly, unfortunately. But it was sort of interesting because it kind of reflected the fact that Polly was always on the move, always had energy, always thinking ahead. And I really hope that even, years down the line for myself, that I am able to maintain that spirit. And so with that, actually, I wanted to introduce you all to two friends of Polly who were really someone who I guess recently became a friend of Polly's a few years back, who also happens to be a member of the Juilliard Quartet. Her name is Astrid Spain, who will join us with pianist Orly Shahan, and both of them will honor Polly's legacy through music. And so I wanted to invite Astrid up here to speak a couple words about Polly and to also enjoy. So thank you all again, and I hope you enjoyed the performance.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see so many of you here. It's lovely. And I'm delighted to be here to pay tribute to my dear friend, Polly Kahn. Gary, thank you for inviting me. And Orly, thank you for being here with us, too. I know you knew Polly a little bit as well. I met Polly 7 years ago because I'm a good friend of her cello teacher. And she loved the cello so much, and she loved her teacher, that I had sort of special access to Polly. We talked about this instrument and about the music that we both loved. She was tremendously inspiring, generous, loving woman, full of passion for whatever she was involved in. And I just feel so fortunate to have been the beneficiary of her wisdom and guidance. She worked with our quartet, the Juilliard String Quartet. She helped members of the quartet with individual musical projects, and the list goes on and on. So Orly and I have selected two movements from a very famous sonata by César Franck. These are the last two movements, and I think we thought these were particularly appropriate because they really cover the range of human emotions, from the loss, the sense of loss and grief, all the way through to an ebullient, bright, and positive spirit, which Polly certainly had.
Thank you so much, Astrid, Orly, for that tremendous memorial to our dear friend Polly. I think this is I'm just quite moved. To know Polly was to love her, and we are so grateful for the legacy that she has sparked with what has now become the Roundtable in partnership with Madeline, with David, with Joanne, with Fran, with Brenda, and so many others. And for that, we are entirely grateful. It is that the crux of the Roundtable for me is that idea of community as a means of self-evolving and advancing, and that being into community together with one another, artists, educators, and beyond, is what ultimately makes us stronger. And so with that, I'm excited to bring up our next speaker, who is another member of our community and extends to our friends in government as well. At the Roundtable, we love to bring visibility and advocacy to the importance of arts in our schools and our communities. And so with that, I'm so incredibly grateful and excited to introduce you to the Deputy Borough President of Manhattan, the Honorable Misha Smith. Welcome, Misha.
Good afternoon. I'm Deputy Manhattan Borough President Misha Smith, and it's an honor to join you as we close out this year's face-to-face conference. Today has been a powerful reminder of what arts education makes possible It's creativity, connection, and an opportunity for the next generation of New Yorkers and Manhattanites. And it's especially fitting that we close by honoring Polly Kahn today. Polly was not just a leader in arts education, she helped shape the field itself. Through her work with the League of American Orchestras and across so many of our country's leading cultural institutions, she championed something that feels very obvious now, but wasn't always, that the arts must be inclusive, must be community-centered, and constantly evolving. She believed in people deeply, in developing the next generation of artists and leaders, in opening doors wider, in making sure more voices were heard on stage and off. And she didn't just believe those things, she built programs, mentored leaders, and created pathways that made them real. You can see her legacy everywhere today, in the institutions that she strengthened, the leaders she guided, and the values that now define this work. And you can feel it in this room with that amazing performance. Because the spirit Polly brought to her work, collaborative, generous, and forward-looking, is the same spirit that defines this community of teaching artists and arts educators that's guided today by the leadership of Executive Director Kimberly Olsen. It's also why your work matters so much. Every day you create spaces where young people feel seen, where they discover their voice, where they begin to imagine what's possible for themselves. And that kind of impact doesn't just happen by accident, it happens because of people like you. It also requires real support. That's why our office and the Manhattan Borough President is committing 100% of our capital budget this year to only arts and cultural institutions throughout Manhattan. Thank you. And we're launching the Manhattan Multiplier for Arts and Culture. So every public dollar that we invest this year brings in even more support while expanding access for New Yorkers. Because if we want to honor Polly's legacy, we do it not just by remembering her, but by continuing the work that she dedicated her life to, by investing in this community, by growing it, and by making sure it remains at the heart of New York City for generations to come. So thank you, thank you, thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for being here today. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for those beautiful remarks. I recognize we're nearing the end of our time together, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you just a snippet of update of what's going on at the roundtable, and then we're gonna release a fuller video for anybody that's interested in hearing more about what's happening in full as we look towards the future. So, just reflecting on the past for a brief moment, last year our programs reached 2,800 people. That is 55 events that were hosted, 123 professional development hours. We are so incredibly excited to continue offering these types of robust opportunities to our community. Budgets, we're doing fine, thank goodness, but you can see a lot of contributed income, not as much earned. For those in the budget workshop, hopefully this is resonating. I think the thing, though, that I just want to uplift is, as you've heard echoed, the roundtable's right now in the midst of a strategic planning process. That what is so incredibly helpful for me as a leader of this organization is to have a roadmap. And we know there might be a detour that happens or a pandemic that throws a whole whammy into what your plans might be. But having that roadmap that helps instill what our values are, how we hope to seek to move forward in service and support of our community, helps as a guide so that when we do have tough things come up, we have something to help us move forward. So we've just recently completed our 5-year strategic plan and are now embarking on the next phase. So in partnership with Stacy McMath from Web Management, what's happened so far? We've had a leadership retreat with the staff and board. We've held bi-weekly strategic planning meetings. We've had 47 community interviews, 6 focus groups, 321 people responded to a community survey. And now we're in the process of analyzing that, doing a SWOT analysis to see where our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are as an organization. And we're moving into goal setting of what does taking in all that information look like so we can make smart decisions moving forward. I'm going to skip through this, which has some data, which I'll share more robustly post-conference. sort of unpacking where our services fall in terms of what you need, what our sector needs. Overwhelmingly, we're excited to see that it seems like our work is showing up for our communities in the spaces that you are seeking support, and that you're using our compensation survey, so we're glad to see that. But I want to end with a what's next, just so you have a sense of what's coming up. So as I said, we're in the process of really honing in and articulating with intentionality what are our goals for the next 5 years, and how we're going to be doing that, not only just as the Roundtable staff and board, but in partnership with our 10 community-driven committees. We're then going to go into the operationalizing component of it. It's great to have a goal, but how are we actually going to get the work done? That means planning, that means phasing, that means budgeting, so we know what resources we need to have on hand to make this happen. And then also, what's not a plan if you don't have a way to measure what its success is and have an accountability component to it? So that's coming up with our next steps as well. And ultimately, we're hoping for a fall 2026 rollout. So at that point, you will definitely hear more about where we landed. We'll have, I'm sure, some engagement events around it, because truly everything that we are doing, trying to inform this plan, sparks with you all. So again, my speed version, but I appreciate everybody's time. I think to wrap us up, it's my great pleasure to bring up Associate Director of Education at Lincoln Center Theater and co-chair of the Face-to-Face Conference, the lovely Alexandra Lopez.
Hi, everyone. Will not keep you long, and woohoo to the diehards who are still here. It's been my privilege to co-chair this conference for a couple of years with my good friends Amy Harris and Dr. Shobha Kavanakudio. Yes. I also want to say that this is like the culmination of one aspect of the work that the Roundtable does, a huge one. It brings so many of us in community together, and kind of linking back to Clive's opening remarks and our community plenary this morning, we are part of a human ecosystem of arts and education in New York City. And I'm just so glad that we have the opportunity to meet and gather in this space. I will invite you to participate with the Roundtable in other ways. If you feel called to serve, I invite you to come, join a committee, take over as a co-chair, do all sorts of things. There are lots of opportunities here, as exemplified by the amazing founders, including Polly, of serving your community and being an intrinsic part of this ecosystem. And one of the ways that we can improve the work that we do is by hearing from you via the survey. So please take a moment before we lose it in the fog of war, to take some moment to reflect and give us some of your feedback, so we can continue to make this a growing space for all of us. Please take food. If there's any left and you want any, please help yourself. And I also want to encourage you to keep the party going if you so wish. Show your face. Information is in the program. So if you'd like to carry on the conversation out of the Great Hall and with a little beverage, please do. And before we go, can we please give a big round of applause to the Roundtable staff? This gathering is exponentially improved because of the amazing work that they do all year long, especially around this project. So thank you all also for being here, for coming, for staying, and we hope that you have a fabulous evening, year ahead, and we continue to see you at more Roundtable events. Thanks so much.